You're listening to Art Talk here at Monthaven Arts and Cultural Center in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'm John Pitcher. We're joined today by a true Renaissance man of the arts, Stas Namin. Stas's terrific paintings of some of the world's greatest rock musicians, artists like the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, and more, are currently on display at the MACC. They are part of an exhibition titled Shakers, Breakers, and Music Makers. The exhibit is on display through June 11th. I can't think of anyone more qualified to create this exhibit than Stas Namin. That's because Stas is himself a rock musician of the first rank. Born in the former Soviet Union, Stas is one of the fathers of Russian rock music. He started Russia's first rock and roll supergroup, the Flowers, in 1969. The Flowers went on to sell more than 60 million records in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. Stas has also been a force behind many important Russian music festivals, including the famous Moscow Peace Festival of 1989. Stas has also been a successful photographer, theater director, author, peace activist, and entrepreneur. Like I said, he is a true Renaissance man. Stas, welcome to Monthaven.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd like to start off. I'm wondering if let's start off with just your background, because we just took a look at a photo of you, and when I guess you were a teenager in military school playing a guitar. And I was wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit about the musical world that you grew up in, because I kind of get the sense that life in the Soviet Union in the 1950s and 60s might have been more focused on Beethoven than the Beatles. What do you think?
Actually, in Soviet Union, there was absolutely different life. It's not like world music all over. It was Iron Curtain, and we actually didn't know anything what was going on behind Iron Curtain. Mm-hmm. But inside, we had very strange, mostly official music, mm-hmm. with patriotic lyrics and very strange style, mm-hmm. let's say. And when we, I was maybe, particularly my musical education is very interesting, because my mother is a professional musician. She is 95 right now, and she graduated from conservatory, mm-hmm. and she is like a pianist and theoretical composer and so on. And that's why in our house there were many great musicians as guests: Shostakovich, Rostropovich,
Alfred Schnittke.
For sure.
Yeah, Khachaturian. All of these great people. Yeah.
That's why I was learning classical music also. Mm-hmm. But when I heard Beatles and Rolling Stones, something wrong with my mind. It blew up. I mean, I forgot everything, and I started to try to play rock and roll.
Right.
But I understand that it was started even earlier, because my father, who was a military pilot during the World War II, mm-hmm. He was military pilot even after the war, and we were in different military bases. We lived there. It's far from Moscow. It's in different areas of Soviet Union mostly, and all the time he was taking with him old big tape recorder, that time, it was like 50 something, mm-hmm. 55, or even a little later. And I remember he was listening to a very famous Russian controversial singer, Akujava, mm-hmm. and Vysotsky. But he also was listening to old rock and roll, like traditional, from Little Steven and Elvis Presley. And that time I didn't even understand what he was listening, but I was involved in that type of music. And maybe that's why when I heard first time Beatles and Rolling Stones, I became their fan immediately in 1 second.
Wow. So did you first hear that rock and roll just from your father's music, from his collection?
Actually,
So
yes.
that's where it came through.
Actually, but that was not rock music. It was rock and roll.
That's right.
Traditional rock and roll. And rock music I've heard when I was in military school, because traditionally I was in military school from 11 years old. And when I was 12, I started to. It was difficult to hear that music because it was all forbidden in Soviet Union. So we were trying to find it in radio, like different radio stations from Europe and from United States, from everywhere, from Britain. And some records also, some people were bringing records from abroad, and they were copying and doing some copies. And so we were trying to find out what's going on. I mean, it's like absolutely different mentality. So I should tell you that my series, Rules of Rock and Roll, which became like Faces of Freedom, more wide series, because for me, and not only for me, for kids in Soviet Union, it was really window to freedom. Because for the whole world, it was just great music and great musicians, and for us, it was much more than just great music. It was like we were learning not only how to play music and how to sing, we were learning how to live. It was some energy of freedom, some vibrations of freedom, and that's why it was so forbidden in Soviet Union also.
Right. You were in a military school. How did you go from being a cadet to being a rock musician?
But that time, nobody in Soviet Union understand what means rock music. They didn't even call it rock music or something. They were just, they understand that I was doing something different.
Right.
But they even didn't understand what.
Okay.
They tried to forbid, and they forbid what I was doing. But still, it was like music. And they said, it's too loud. And they like, when I was in military school, it was even before they officially forbid rock music. It was in beginning of 60s. But in 50s, they even didn't know what to forbid.
Right.
It was just something absolutely new.
Yeah. Well, by the time you got to the late 60s, you formed your, now legendary band, The Flowers. And in creating this band, what were your musical influences? I mean, what was Stas Namin listening to at that time?
Actually, I created this band. Actually, it was the third band.
It was your third band, right.
And I did it right after Woodstock Festival, because I was so much influenced by Woodstock. I was absolutely shocked when I heard the music, what Jimi Hendrix played, like the Band of Gypsies. Actually, he became my teacher, but he didn't know about that. And I was learning guitar from Jimi Hendrix. After I was already after Beatles and Rolling Stones, which I was 100% fan of Beatles and Rolling Stones. And till now, I think that Beatles is the geniuses of music,
right,
and Rolling Stones are geniuses of rock music. And I am the same fan of both of them, because in Russia that time, even not that time, even now maybe, people are divided in two parts. Some of them love Beatles, some of them love Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
But I love both.
You do have those camps.
Yeah, but when I heard Jimi Hendrix, it blew my mind.
Right.
I mean, I couldn't imagine that there is absolutely different music and different language. And he is, for me, is absolutely genius, not only as a guitar player, as a musician. And I started to play guitar under his influence very seriously. Before I was just playing guitar. And after him, I started to play his style. Right. Now I don't know what style I have, because everything is mixed. But till now, he's a genius for me. So Flowers, I formed under the influence of hippie movement mostly. That's why it's the name of flowers. It's a flower power, flower children. And I was that time a sort of hippie in Soviet Union. And there were several kids like me who were under this influence. Not so many, because it was all forbidden.
Right.
And the information was forbidden. It was difficult to get the information.
Right.
Not only information about, there was no internet and no video. So the only way we can find out something is from photographs on records and music.
Well, word of the flowers must have been getting out, because I read a very interesting statistic that the Flowers, your first single in 1973, sold 7 million copies.
Yeah, that's right.
So obviously a lot of people were listening. There was a lot. There must have been a real appetite, a real hunger for this kind of music.
They even didn't. People even didn't realize what it is. I mean, they never heard about rock music.
Right.
Only kids. But the majority of people, they were. They felt that it's different and very honest. No bullshit.
Right.
No like ideological influence.
Right.
We were singing about love, but seriously, like from heart, and they felt it.
Right.
I think that's the secret of popularity.
Right. It sounds almost a little bit like the United States in the mid-1950s when Elvis was, breaking through all these barriers. The white singer singing African American style music, which was frowned upon. In a lot of conservative circles in America, and but the kids knew it. The kids heard it and they listened to it and they turned it into a sensation. So it sounds like maybe something similar was beginning to happen in Russia around that time.
Absolutely, maybe you're right.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Well, you mentioned that the music was frowned upon, I guess, by the authorities. What happened with the Flowers and the authorities in the mid-70s? Because didn't they start, kind of, once you became famous and, you were having a lot of influence, did they want to kind of put a stop to this, or what happened?
That time, in Soviet Union, there was only one official record company. There was no others, because everything was like monopoly of the state and was not like any private enterprise. So this record company was recording and releasing only official records and official music. And we were students that time, and we were very popular. And one student festival, we won like first prize or something.
Right.
And as students, we got permission to make record. And Melodia people from the record company, they didn't expect any popularity. They just, it's amateurs, students, and just the present sort of to release amateur record. And when it was sold 7 million copies, then they, first of all, they were glad because they didn't pay us. And they got 7 million copies, so it's like big money. And then they suggested us to record another one, to make a record, another record. And it was also almost 7 million.
Wow.
And so altogether, by let's see, by the middle of the 80s, we sold 60 million copies, even more.
Wow.
And they didn't pay us, still didn't pay. So they got big money. But that was the only way we can show our music, because we were forbidden on television, radio, and concerts also. In concerts, they permit us to perform only in the small cities all over the country, but not in the big cities. And we played like 3 stadiums a day.
Wow.
Yeah. And they paid us $7 per concert, 7 rubles for concert, per the full concert. And stadium paid us 7 rubles. So it was not the point of money. We were playing for our pleasure, and we're not thinking about money at all.
On the other hand, I can kind of see why a lot of famous classical musicians around that time were fleeing the country, because obviously they probably weren't making a lot of money either.
Yeah.
So that was a big change. Well, things did start to change, though. In 1986, I believe, it was a bit of a turning point for artistic freedom in Russia. You had the rise of Mikhail Gorbachev and Perestroika, and the Flower was actually allowed to tour, right, into the West?
Yeah, actually, starting from Gorbachev, my life was changed. We were forbidden, me personally, and my band was forbidden for 25 years. And when I was already 35, they let me out of the country. It was Perestroika, and with the help of Gorbachev, it happened. And we were touring United States and Canada in 86, in September 86, I remember. Right. There was an interesting moment when we came to New York, and we had a concert in Manhattan in Limelight Club. It's a very famous rock club where Rolling Stones performed before us, Elton John. So we were, we were going on stage with like shaking, our hands and nervous. So interesting that concert was exactly the birthday of John Lennon.
Oh my gosh.
And we started the concert with a song which I wrote and devoted to him.
What was the song?
I Don't Surrender.
Okay.
That's the name of the song. And to our press conference came Yoko Ono. And that's very interesting, because we didn't expect that. It was in Hard Rock Cafe in New York. And I suddenly see very familiar face. So I jumped out of the stage and came up to her. Said, "Are you Yoko Ono?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What are you doing here?" Said, "You're a Russian band." And my aunt was Russian. I said, "How possible? I mean, where?" She said, "In Japan." And that's why I know Russian literature, Chekhov, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and so on. So after that, she invited me to Dakota, to the place they lived with John. And we spent like 2 days and nights together, because at night she was taking me to different clubs, introducing me to great musicians in New York. And daytime we were just having, we're talking about everything. And she was telling me the stories about John and about his life.
Wow. Well, I believe 1986 was also the year that you formed the Stas Namin Center in Gorky Park to support musicians, artists, and poets forbidden by the Soviet Union. At that point in history, why did you believe the Stas Namin Center was necessary?
When Gorbachev came into the power and starting to make changes, I understand that it was not so simple for him, not so easy, because big part of the government and all the military people and others were against these changes. And that's why it was going rather slow. One time he said on TV, "What is not forbidden by law is permitted," which was absolutely revolutionary thing. Because in Russia, in Soviet Union, the constitution of Soviet Union was very progressive. If you read it, it's very progressive, fair, and smart. But real life was absolutely different. It was not connected with constitution. It was connected with some restrictions which are much more powerful than constitution. So when he said that according to law, that means constitution, it is not forbidden what is not forbidden by law, I decided to try it, because all my life everything was forbidden, and now I said, in constitution there was no sign that rock and roll is forbidden.
Okay.
So why should I? Why not to help all the forbidden bands?
Right.
So I put together about 50 or even more, the best forbidden young musicians, and started to produce them, help them to record. I made and released records of all forbidden bands in Soviet Union, and they from different countries, not only different cities, not only from Moscow, from Petersburg, from Siberia, from everywhere. And now most of them are very famous and top bands. Some of them are forbidden right now, already because of different situation. You know, life in Russia, it's going by circles. You know, now it's again circle, which is rather difficult. Makes difficult to express what real rock musicians think and what to say.
Yeah. Well, speaking of great rock musicians, I love the way that Frank Zappa referred to the Stas Namin Center. He called it the Russian Bauhaus. And, interestingly, Zappa grew up admiring the music of the great avant-garde French composer Varese, and you grew up with a mother who, was surrounded by some of the great, Russian classical composers of the 20th century. And I've heard you often described as the Russian Bob Dylan, but I'm wondering if maybe you're really the Russian Frank Zappa, because you two seem to have a lot in common. And I mean, you're both amazing guitar players, highly literate musicians. Both of you easily cross over, it seems, to multiple genres. I mean, Pierre Boulez loved Zappa and recorded his music. So I'm wondering, are you maybe the Russian Frank Zappa?
You're the first who said that, and I think you are in some way you're right, because that's why actually we became very close friends. We were really very close friends, and till the last moment of his life, we were together, and. I'm not just exactly like Frank Zappa, because I was doing I'm doing actually different kind of songs. Regarding songwriters and songwriting, we are different. But I'm more like in Beatles style and Rolling Stones and so on. But symphony music, I think, really in one direction we have, and guitar play. Guitar is like, I think it's in his direction. Maybe you know that I made a record a few years ago. I mean, it was long ago. It was about 20 years ago. It was called Kama Sutra and devoted to Frank Zappa. Interesting that I made a record which took me exactly so many seconds and minutes how the record sounds, because I didn't do any takes, just one take, the whole. It's improvisation. And I devoted to him because actually we were so close in music and personally also. When he was already close to going to different world, he was not seeing anybody. And I came to Los Angeles and called them, and Gail, his wife, said that unfortunately he doesn't want to meet anybody. I said, just tell him that I'm here and that's all. And she called me back and said he wants to see you immediately. And I came, and we were sitting for about 2 hours talking about different things, which we discussed before and thinking, because for many years we were planning different interesting things. And then Gail came and said that the Chinese doctor came. And I said, okay, Frank, I will go. He said, are you in a hurry? I said, no. So maybe you go to the studio to hear my symphony the last thing which I just created. And I went there while the doctor was with him. And after doctor, we again spent about an hour talking about different things. I was maybe the last he ever saw.
My gosh. One of my all-time favorite musicians, so I'm so thrilled to actually hear that story, which
He
I've
was
never
a
heard
very warm-hearted person, because his image, as you know, maybe
It's like
very
sort of an
tough guy.
image of an iconoclast, yeah.
He was tough for sure, but tough in different things, but not in life.
Yeah.
In life, he was very warm, very intelligent, very soft person, very nice. I mean, he will be forever in my heart.
Well, I want to ask you about another friend of yours. I don't know if it wouldn't be maybe as close, but Harry Belafonte, who passed away this week at age 96. And Belafonte invited you in 1981 to join the international organization Artists for Peace. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Harry Belafonte and maybe his influence on you as an activist. I'm wondering, did his example of being an activist, because there are obviously a lot of roadblocks in his way, as an African American artist in the 1950s and 60s. Did his influence you in any way to become an activist? Did it influence your ideas of maybe coming up with your Moscow Peace Festival in 1989?
No, I think yes. I think in some way he influenced me, because that time they didn't let me out of the country. I didn't see foreigners at all. It was in Soviet Union. It was forbidden to talk to foreigners without permission of KGB or any officials. And he was on peace committee also. He came as a guest of Soviet peace committee.
Right.
And I had some friends there, and they invited me there to meet him, and we became friends with him. And he immediately invited me to the organization. Musicians for Peace or something, I don't remember exactly the name. And we were talking about different things, about message from musicians to the world, to be activist. Yes, it's like a strange word, what means activist. But still, you shouldn't be ignorant and cynical to the world around you. That's why you're a musician. And that's the only way a real musician can live. Otherwise, I mean, you're just a professional who's doing something you were learning from school. But if you have music in your heart, especially songs, you have to sing about what you see around you, what worries you. And maybe after our meeting and when we became friends, I started to sing very controversial songs, and they forbidden me in Soviet Union also.
That brings me back to something I was thinking of asking you. I noticed that there were times in your life when the authorities would forbid you from doing one thing, for instance, maybe playing music, and that you might use that as an opportunity to focus on something different, like filmmaking. And I'm wondering if the sort of the authoritative nature of the government maybe backfired a little bit with you, because you always found a new way to be creative.
Yes, but that time, the flowers, the first steps of flowers, first part of our records and songs, were actually about love, mostly, and very similar to Beatles style.
Yeah.
I mean, then we became more social and more controversial.
Right.
But we started with just rock love songs. But even that was forbidden because the style was very different than official Soviet.
Right.
But when we started to sing and I was writing controversial songs, then we became already on the KGB.
Sort of on their list.
Yes, on their list, exactly. And when I did in Armenia, the first actually in the country rock festival, KGB, and was published in the articles about that festival was in German magazine Stern, and Time magazine in the United States. Several pages, and they called it Yerevan, it's the capital of Armenia, Yerevan Woodstock style. And we were playing till 2 o'clock in the morning, it was all there. But that time in Soviet Union, if American press, like Time magazine, is good, saying good words about something, that means they should say vice versa. That is like enemies is saying good words, that means, so after that, KGB took my passport and forbidden everything, and kicked me out from any organization and forbidden even in Melodia. So that time I wrote the song which is called I Wish You Happiness. And the song was forbidden for 3 years, only because I was forbidden. But then it slowly became popular, and for last 40 years it's the most popular song among all Russian-speaking people on earth.
Wow.
But it was forbidden for 3 years in Soviet Union.
Wow. Well, we're here at Monthaven, and we are surrounded in your art galleries with your great artwork. The exhibits, Shakers, Breakers, and Music Makers, that portraits of many great rock stars that you've known. I mean, some that you've I guess you've done from memory or from images. You've been a musician all your life. When did you take up painting? And because these are amazingly expressive and also realistic depictions of these great art, you seem to capture their soul.
Actually I was painting and I was drawing all my life. I was not taking it very seriously in the beginning, because actually everything what I was doing was mostly for pleasure. I was never thinking even about music. I was never thinking about making money. It was just sort of an expression of my soul, my emotions. The same with art. I was never selling it. And my art was in different museums already, even in different museums in different countries, and in Russia, in the State Russian Museum in Petersburg, in Tretyakov Gallery, there was exhibitions in different. But I never sell it. I was not presenting my art in galleries. But after the Academy of Russian Art, which is existing for more than 300 years, I had there a personal exhibition, and I became an academician of Russian art, of the Academy of Russian Art. Then a friend of mine, Gene Lance, whom I know for about 30 years or even more, 35, he brought Peter MACC to Moscow, to my festival, which I put together in Moscow, in Luzhniki Stadium. It was actually the first global rock festival in Soviet Union, which was like Woodstock in the United States and in the world. But it was also sort of a sign of different life, of freedom. Because if this kind of thing is possible, then everybody understood that something has changed seriously. From that moment, rock and roll became not forbidden in Soviet Union, and all life became different. But that time, Peter MACC created the stage, and we became friends with Peter MACC and with Gene Lance. So we are till now we're friends, and Gene suggested me to present my art to Park West Gallery. So that was the first time I started to sell my pictures, because Park West Gallery is like maybe the biggest in the world.
It is the
most experienced,
and they represent Peter MACC and so many others. Tell me a little bit about your process of painting, because they look like they're many of the artists that you've painted are look like scenes that I'm familiar with from album covers and other magazines. Do you paint from photos, or do you paint from memory, or how do you do it?
Even some of the portraits I'm doing by basing on photos, because I didn't know Jimi Hendrix and I didn't know Janis Joplin personally. But even if I'm using photo as a basic information, I'm changing it because I'm drawing and it's my hand, and I'm changing the expression of the face and different things. For example, I did Beatles basing on a Magical Mystery Tour photo with the costumes, remember there? But I changed the costumes, and I put Russian orders like from Tsar's time, and different Russian clothes, because they wrote a song back in the USSR. That was joke. They never been in the USSR. So I made joke also. If you so then you were in the USSR, so you got, and it's all different. But they called my style psychedelic expressionism. Because from one side it's realism, because you can recognize faces, and from the other side I'm doing colors, unreal.
The colors, I think, are the things I find almost most striking about your works, because you're obviously conveying your feelings about these artists through your choice of colors.
I even don't know how these colors are coming to my mind, to my heart, and why I feel this. I don't know. I'm not planning to do it. When I'm in the process of drawing, of painting, then colors are coming. But it's not like I roughly I can understand in what direction, but then it goes itself.
Well, Stas Namin, you're a true Renaissance man, and you've been an important musician and visual artist and photographer and theater director and a peace activist. Of all these things, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of my freedom. It's, art is, I will tell you a very controversial thing, I think. From my point of view, any art, music, anything, is secondary in human being's life. The most important is life itself. And in my life, it's exactly like that. I appreciate people around me, my close people, my family. My mother, she's still alive, she's 95. My friends, and all the life itself with all the people is the most important for me. And because I'm happy, it gives me forces and energy to do something, to express my happiness. And that's why that song, We Wish You Happiness, became so popular. And now, recently, like about a month ago, I got Global Music Award for several songs, and one of them, it's like it's instrumental versions of songs. One of them is that Happiness.
Wow.
And my daughter was asking me almost the same question, how I can do so many different things and all rather successful. And I answered her, and now I'm repeating that answer because I like what I said. I said, I'm doing everything very fast, but I'm not in a hurry. I don't think I have to do something. I'm doing because I feel happy, and the happiness is giving me this energy. And that's why I'm doing very fast. And I feel that all directions of art, of creative art, has the same criteria. The most important in art is to express and to investigate the soul of human being, how God created human. And that's why Shakespeare is a genius. That's why all the genius writers, poets, and musicians are very close, and they are investigating and trying to find out, to put together the magic of human soul. If your art is not touching you, for me it's not art.
Right.
It's just design, maybe. So I'm trying to do something which touches me, and I hope touches everybody who is connected, who is listening to my music or seeing my art or anything what I'm doing.
Right. Well, Stas, your art, your music has touched millions. So I thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, sir.
Great. And thank you for listening to Art Talk at the Monthaven Arts and Cultural Center. Don't forget to check out Shakers, Breakers, and Music Makers Contemporary Portraits by Stas Namin. They're on display through June 11th. We'll see you at the MACC.